Thank you for coming to see us. As Katie mentioned, this is the team behind the sensation that is John Summit, Ben, Daisy, Holt, and Parker. And why don't you guys, let's run it down and you can just give a little bit of context of what you do on John's team.
Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Shprits. I work at Wasserman out of Los Angeles with my colleague Daisy here. I've been working in electronic music since 2012. Started at AM Only, moved on into Paradigm, now Wasserman. Been working with John since 2020.
I'm Daisy Hoffman. I'm out of the New York office. I'm also an agent at Wasserman. I have worked with Ben probably for about 10 years now. I started as his assistant at AM Only and moved on to Paradigm, made my way up to become an agent, and I'm now in the New York office just working away.
Hi, everybody. I'm Holt Harmon. Work together with Parker. We own Metatone, work with a handful of artists, and we've been working with John for 8 years now, since 2018. Yeah, I guess that's it.
I'm Parker Cohen. As Holt said, we've been together for about 8 years, owning Metatone, based in Phoenix / Miami.
Cool. Okay, so let's start from the start. Tell me about meeting John and if you knew immediately that this was something special or if it was kind of a thing that presented itself more and more over time. Parker, why don't you start? Because you met him first, right?
Yeah, so we actually met him
Parker,
at...
Holt. I'm
It's
looking
all
at
good.
Holt, saying Parker, but you know what I
All
mean.
good. We met him at the same time, actually through another client we were working with. They were working together on a song, collaborating. They ended up doing much better than he expected. He wanted to find out, hey, why did this all go so well? Because he was a hobbyist at the time, not really a professional. So we met, and early days immediately identified that, hey, this is somebody who cares about it at the level we do, who's thinking about it at a higher level, who understands that there's more than just showing up and plugging in your USB. And so for us, we wanted to align with people that had a bigger vision and a bigger way of looking at things. And so, yeah, we immediately jumped on with them. I think it took like one Zoom call, and I have like this funny story about the fact that we sent him the contract and we're trying to tell him to review it and like make sure to go everything, and he sent it back signed in 2 minutes and said, well, if this shit doesn't work out, it doesn't matter anyways. So it was one of those moments where I was like, you know what, there's a lot of like trust on both sides, but we're all ambitiously going for this thing that doesn't really seem real. Mm-hmm. But yeah, we all believe in each other and like the idea that there is something bigger to achieve here than just showing up and running the club circuit.
Sure. Okay.
We still have the same contract in place.
He still signs them all in 2 minutes. So you two, tell me when John kind of came into your purview and if you knew right away that this was something special.
So I was connected to Parker and Holt and John through a mutual friend. It was during the pandemic, spring 2020, when we were all kind of going a little stir crazy. I remember distinctly a great Zoom call that we had with John, Holt, Parker, myself, and at the time Ben was not yet brought in, and we were thinking like, what's the magic that we need to make this happen? And it felt like Ben's expertise was really important to us to bring in. There was a lot of like youth and energy in the room in that Zoom, I feel, and I think we all needed a little guidance. So it was that part was great, but I think this was right around 2020 when he released Deep End, when we were doing this, when we were mid-pandemic and also all about to go off the deep end ourselves, I think. So it was very necessary for us to kind of stay focused. I think I was drawn in by John's authenticity to the project and what he brought to the table and how excited he was and just how raw that was.
Cool. Ben?
Yeah, I mean, the raw talent was very apparent. The Deep End was, number one on Beatport for, I think it was probably 3 months at the time. But what really impressed me was the excitement, the energy coming from the managers, and this unbelievable link that they sent me of music. And these records were just undeniably strong, and they had such a intentional plan of how they intended to roll out music and build things from that side. And I got excited, and I was all in straight away.
So I've been having conversations with some other agents lately who are telling me more and more now it's important to have kind of your first look ready because that first look and the first things you do in a career become more important now because of social media and the way that things travel. Would you say that your strategy now for John is the same that it was at the beginning? Like, did you kind of know what you were doing from the jump? And yeah, Daisy?
No.
Nope.
I think, when we were getting started, we wanted to, first of all, temper expectations to some extent because the world was closed. We didn't know how it was going to come back. We didn't know what would happen with all the bookings that were already in that needed to be rescheduled, which, were rescheduled over and over until we actually opened the world back up. And so, we intended to put our foot down in everywhere that we could. So we started in the South during, the pandemic where, Texas was open, Florida was open, getting to, markets as quickly as we could once you could get back to them, doing park-in raves and, drive-ins and all this kind of stuff. But John got a leg up on all the international artists because he was here and he was ready to go, and the music was really bursting, and you could see that there was a connection with an audience, a community that was building, and everything we'd put up basically would blow right out. So
Sure.
we could tell the demand was just,
Sure. Let's talk about some of the groundwork during the pandemic itself, because obviously John was very online and he didn't use it as downtime. He used it as a time to build his brand and his profile on the internet. So guys, take me through that and just what the thinking was and then how that ultimately served what happened when things opened back up.
Yeah, I remember we had a conversation kind of immediately following Miami Music Week getting canceled, and it was at that moment we had like 4 different gigs booked. It was the first time we actually felt like, hey, this is our time, we can actually go take this. Immediately finding out that's canceling, the world's shutting down, and we had a call, and it was like, we haven't made shit yet. We haven't gone out there and done anything that we're looking to accomplish. We have no money. We're all broke. Every dollar that we're making is being reinvested in this project. It was one of those moments where it's like our back's against the wall, and are we going to come out swinging, or are we just going to die? And so for us, we had no other option but to throw everything at the wall. It was 6 hours worth of Zoom calls specifically talking about what content we could drop, what records we could drop. It was like we understood that a lot of people were taking a step back and were waiting for things to kind of reset, and we didn't have that option. So for us, it was kind of like there is no other way but to trudge forward. So it was the second we got on, it was a really important thing that we got on.
Yeah, John, he was in his parents' basement at the time, and he was just scheming on like TikToks to make, obviously working on music day in and day out. So it was really about like, how can we get ahead, not use this time to kind of sulk and sit back,
Yeah.
It was just really about like being forward thinking on how to put himself out there. And
I
it
also
worked out.
think because of his ability and such as his ability to connect to people online, he also kind of got a leg up on other artists because simply no one else was able to connect in person. So on his platforms, I think people were getting an intimate view of his life, and I think that was appealing to people at
And
the time.
he still talks about this now, but it's like you have to risk being a little cringy,
Yeah.
Right.
putting
Yeah.
yourself out there, and he fully risked it during COVID.
What is it that you guys always say? It's ask for forgiveness, not for permission.
Yeah.
So it's a bit about that.
Well, yeah, so it obviously worked because you guys really hit the ground running when things opened back up. And I remember you saying that your strategy immediately was to just be everywhere all the time in many places as you could. How did you manage that? And what was your strategy when you were then selling out venues in like 12 seconds? How did you use that momentum?
Yeah, but one really big strategy for us all the time is working off of FOMO. And for me, everything that I've ever wanted to go to really badly is because of the idea that it's not going to be there for long and it's really hard to get in. And so it wasn't always full scarcity, but the idea was we want people to see it go up, we want it to immediately sell out, and we want to move on to the next thing. And so it's like you train your audience to be like, you have to immediately act if you want this ticket. Or you have to immediately act if you want this thing. And so for us, I really feel like FOMO is a lead, and then after FOMO, it was like really intentionally deciding where we were going to go and throw these shows. Because for us, we wanted to do things that were new and exciting, and then not everybody else has done. We were just talking about this the other day, that the second we see somebody else do something and that takes away the newness of that, we're immediately looking to pivot and do something different. And I think we just we kept the FOMO strategy rolling from the idea like, hey, let's not put too much out there. Let's do underplays. Let's play smaller rooms than maybe we're actually meant to be playing as a means of of like watching these things fly.
Yeah.
And anything that we sacrifice on the front end, we're going to see on the back end, because that's going to spread to everybody else. Like, oh, well, I wanted to get a ticket to that, but I couldn't. You know, I think you have 4 times the effect with people not going to your show that you do from the people that go.
Yeah, that's interesting. And the way you guys use social media in that as well. I'm thinking of, when he played the boat, when he was playing Madison Square Garden, and there was still a feeling of FOMO, even though you were doing this massive show in town. There was this other thing that people couldn't get into, and you use that so well on social media to create what you're saying. And so my next question was kind of, how does FOMO scale? But maybe it's just what you're saying with the underplays and the smaller shows you do around the big ones.
I think it's also about balancing both still, and that's what's so important to John in his career, is not just playing the Madison Square Gardens, also playing the Brooklyn Storehouse right afterwards, which lends to his sound and kind of being able to have one foot in both lanes. But I think that it also lends to the FOMO aspect of it when we're scaling from 15,000 cap venues to he's playing an intimate 2,000, 1,000 person party.
Right. Yeah. Well, we've talked about this before, just kind of this 3-pronged approach that you guys have, because you have John as kind of this marquee headliner, you have Experts Only, and then you have Everything Always with Dom Dalla. And so how has that kind of, 3-piece career allowed you to create what you're saying and also come through markets multiple times?
Yeah, I would say it keeps things from ever feeling stale, because I feel like, there's only so many cracks at it that you get in each market. We talk every year, it's like, hey, you can only really hit Los Angeles once, you can only hit New York once. I think part of that is also when you go there, taking it over and really feeling like you left and you took over the entire city. But, you only get a crack at these things a handful of times. So the best way to feel new coming back the next time is to give a different offering. So when you're going to a John Summit headline show, you're going to get that big concert feel. It's almost like going to a pop show or going to like a rap show. It's going to feel bigger than life. When you're going to Experts Only, you're going to get the grittiest version of him, where he's going to be digging into his bag. The amount of people that come up after and go, I didn't even know he had that in him. And then Everything Always is the idea of 1 + 1 = 3. Can we go out there and achieve things that singly we couldn't do ourselves, and then kick the door down and allow us to go back there and do it solo, or give a different offering, or even shoot for a higher goal? And things like Ultra, headlining Ultra Miami, it's like that was never in the cards years ago, but like having the ability to do that together, kick that door down, is now going to allow for them to go back and do what they want to do solo, or like take over other areas. So we're always thinking like, what's the next thing that's new, exciting, other people aren't doing, and that it sets a new boundary, more or less.
I think it's really, go ahead, please.
I was gonna say, it also helps keep John motivated, because he's one that if he gets too stuck in doing the same thing over and over again, he gets a little bored. So, Experts Only is a new creative outlet for him. Obviously, Everything Always with Dom kind of gives, them the ability to put their 2 minds together and do something fresh. So it's about keeping him motivated as well.
Did you want to add
Well, I
something?
was just going to say, we're always sort of zooming out and trying to see where we're coming from, where we're at, and where we're going. And having this variety of different ways to sort of appear in the market allows us to really do it intentionally, keep it exciting, not make it feel redundant. And I think as we scale up, it's really important to think about these things, because there's a lot that you can achieve if you play with the demand and you supply the market correctly.
Yeah, I mean, the 3 of us have talked about this before, of just the rarity of what John does and sort of who he is as an artist, and kind of being this crossover person where, my mom knows who he is in Green Bay, Wisconsin, but also my underground dance friends really love and respect what he's doing with Experts Only. Talk about the rarity of that, and then like kind of how you use that to broaden the audience.
Funny enough, like, I honestly don't even think it's that rare. Like, I'm a fan of every type of music in the world. Like, I love listening to indie. Like, I love listening to rap. I love, like, R&B was the first music I fell in love with. So for me, it's actually, I think, tapping into the thing that a lot of people feel. And it's not actually that rare for the consumer to be into a lot of different types of music or want a lot of different type of offerings. So as rare as it is for artists to have the confidence in themselves to go out there and actually do that, it's not that rare for most people to be into multiple different styles of dance music, multiple different styles of music. And so at the end of the day, if it's something that that person loves and that's what they want to be doing, like, they're like, if they can sit with themselves 5-10 years from now and look back and love what they did, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay. Well, I mean, John is such a unique character. He's extremely charismatic. He's extremely talented. He's just kind of got it. He's got that thing. And I'm sure there are a lot of artists and managers and people in the audience wondering, like, how can I get some of that for my career, the thing I'm working on? To what extent is John just kind of a special case, and sort of what lessons are in all of this that you can apply to other people's careers?
I would say I think the one thing that stands out about John to me is how incredibly hard of a worker he is. He kind of consistently refuses to take no as an answer. And I would imagine that he would suggest that for artists going forward, I think that I'm sure it grinds people's gears at some point, but it's how he gets things done, and I think that it's really impressive, and that's my favorite part about working with him, truly.
I think a big part of it too is authenticity. That's a big thing that we preach, and I think other artists, should kind of take from that. You don't need to be super charismatic. You don't have to be like crazy type A personality, but you do have to be yourself, and you have to show yourself to the world and be willing to put yourself out there.
And create community as a result.
Yeah.
People feel like they're really connected to him because he's real.
Right.
And when he makes a mistake, he's pretty open about doing that. And when he has a big win, everyone gets to celebrate it with him. But what you see is what you get with him.
Yeah. So, I mean, I know that this year you guys have talked a lot about, it's really about bringing the show and bringing him international. And so tell me about, where that leaves him in the U.S. and then what you come back to the U.S. for and kind of the opportunities still there and, what you're planning in that market.
Yeah, so the idea of getting away from the United States, I mean, we've built things to such a place where, there aren't many more steps past where we're going, in terms of like scale. And I think the biggest thing that we can play on is really supply. And for us, it's like we've had ambitions to go around the world and bring like the exact same idea everywhere. Like, we just got done with this Australia tour that it felt like we were building over 3 years. We're coming into the summer in Europe and going to be here in a really major way. People are going to see him much more across different markets than they've ever seen him. And I think the idea is like, that is what will build things in North America. Like them seeing him elsewhere, like not having him back home and like seeing him as often as they used to. Like we talked about this year, we might not even be going back to Los Angeles to do another show, like waiting a whole nother year. So it's like taking that supply out of the market is what's ultimately going to keep that growing and honestly keep it interesting. And people feel like that are fans of him feel like they're watching him win across the world.
Right.
And not just thinking about scale, but also thinking about, culture and credibility, headlining things like Lightning in a Bottle, Movement Festival, those counteract or counterbalance or, your curveball to headlining Ultra and, doing those more mainstream outside lands type plays. He's a very unique artist in that he can do both. Mm-hmm. Very rarely do you find someone who's closing the main stage of Ultra to also be closing the main stage of Movement.
Right.
That's, in my mind, that's a 1 in a million.
Yeah. So it's still kind of the FOMO thing that you're talking about, I guess. Where people are seeing him play South America, people are seeing him play Australia. He's just doing it on a mass scale now versus in the early days. What would you say, John is kind of a natural manager, and I think, Parker, you've said he's kind of like the third manager on the team. How do you work with an artist like that who is so headstrong, and sort of what have been the key decisions that you guys have made that you think have kind of gotten you to this place?
I mean, it's honestly amazing because I think as an artist, you have to be able to steer your own ship. It's really difficult if an artist comes to management and, they're asking, what should I do or how should I do this? He already knows exactly where he wants to take things, so we kind of act as a catalyst. He's already got the spark and we're just fanning the flames. So it makes it a lot easier, honestly. I mean, it's still a lot of work, of course, but it's much more of a collaborative effort between the three of us.
Yeah, I feel like these days, if you have to be the third, or you have to be the manager on your project together with the manager you work with, like if we're feeding you ideas, then it's not going to be the authentic version of what you actually want to carry out. And so you said it perfectly. It's like we always talk about being a catalyst. Like we can't be the DJ, we can't be the artist, we can't come up with these ideas, like we can't make your music, but we can give feedback. And if at the end of the day you come to us with an idea and you say, hey, this is what I ultimately want to do, what we're great at is making it happen and making it happen at the best version of it can possibly be. So like if you're not a manager on your project as an artist these days, then you're not going to achieve the things that you want. So.
I think on the agent side too, it's a bit rare for us to be directly communicating sometimes with our clients from time to time. But I think that John is so in the mix. And
You're laughing. I feel like we need an anecdote
No,
here.
it's amazing.
Okay.
no,
He's just very
he's such
driven.
a smart guy.
Yeah.
And
He
having come
understands
from
the pace of his project better than anyone, and
Totally.
he's made that clear over the years. And we're all in, and so
Yeah.
we're able to achieve things that are maybe beyond what's obvious.
And him coming from a corporate background too, I think he has like a serious understanding of how this works and is so curious about how the business side works, that it's really helpful to have him on calls with us, and it's helpful to have him be in the room when we're talking about touring stuff, because he can directly tell us how he's feeling about things.
That's always been a big thing for us too. I feel like there's this weird disconnect between artists and a lot of the people that work for their team, and sometimes certain people want to pigeonhole that hey, you're the artist, don't necessarily need your opinion here, whatever it is. For us, we want them to be involved. We want them speaking with their agents on a daily basis. How are you best going to communicate what your goal is if you can't have a conversation with your agents, if you can't have a conversation with your label, if you can't have a conversation with your PR? We talk to him 24/7. So it's if he's not having that connection with you, it's how is he actually going to deliver the message of what he wants?
And we can only middleman, his vision so much. A lot of it has to come from him because he's the captain of his ship.
And I think it's giving credit to you guys that you encourage him to do so. I think what I meant by that was more so a lot of artists kind of speak through their managers, and the managers want to kind of have a holistic view of what's happening, and I think it's so great that they encourage it more so.
I think that transparency and the dialogue internally also leads to a better end result, because not only are we here dictating what's right from an agent's perspective or a manager's perspective, but we're getting feedback from an artist who is so much at the front of his project. It leads us to, represent him better and to create a better result in the way things, are executed.
Yeah, I mean, it must be such a pleasure and make things so much easier to work with someone who is so clear on what they want and what the vision is. And I'm curious kind of how rare that piece is, of just someone being so kind of singular in what they're doing.
I mean, he's a proper artist who wants to scale and wants to, be involved in what he's doing. He doesn't just want to release music and, go on tour occasionally. He's involved in his project every day. He's on Twitter, he's on socials, he's active. He threw the first pitch at the Cubs game last night. He is very much at the forefront, and I think that, that just spearheads what we do.
Yeah. I guess, how do you, I don't want to say protect him, but how do you make sure as a team that he is not doing too much, not getting to a place where there would be burnout? How do you kind of build in health and then longevity?
I think for us, it's, we're dead honest with them about the fact it's look, we care about you as much as a person as we do about you and the business that you do. And at the end of the day, it's remembering to take off time when it's necessary. It's and off time isn't just a weekend, by the way. Sometimes off time is the week. Sometimes we're hey, you've got this week, get away, go to the beach, go hang out with your friends. Do something other than just be thinking 24/7 about business, because at the end of the day, that will lead to burnout. If you feel you're never leaving that world, you never get to exist outside of that, as well as having goals that are out, we talked about this, having goals that are outside of your business. One big thing for him is he got back into running. He was a cross-country runner when he was young. He wanted to get back into that, and he needed to hear from us, hey, we want you to go we want you to train for that 5K that you want to run in Chicago just as much as we want you to be thinking about what your set is for the next set that you're playing. It's and understanding that at the end of the day, taking that holistic approach is what actually gives somebody the longevity, because they don't feel they're trapped in their business.
From the agent side, we're mapping out a plan, 2 years in advance. And so for us, building time off is just as much a part of when are we going to do the scale tour, when are we going to do this festival. We're building in this time off, at the jump. Right. That wasn't the case, obviously, post-pandemic. It was get out there, play everywhere.
Yep.
Now it's how do we keep you healthy while we achieve all this international touring?
And I think also cutting through the noise and finding what's important in terms of the touring side of things. I think we have to be really strategic about what we even are planning on this year. I mean, as Holt said, we're potentially not even doing an LA show, which, 2 years ago, I think we wouldn't have even said that was possible. But now that we've opened up the whole rest of the world, I think it's really about watering the garden on every side of the planet.
Yeah, we're at a bit of an inflection point right now, because one thing we've realized lately is that what got us here isn't necessarily going to be the thing that keeps us going. Now he needs some time off. He needs to focus on building his personal life a little bit more, because if it was up to him, he would tour every day of the year. So it's just us also kind of giving him that push to take some time off and focus on himself, which he's doing very well right now.
As the scale gets bigger, you need that time off, because you're not just playing clubs where it's just some built-in thing on a Saturday. You're out there trying to play Madison Square Garden or do these kind of really ambitious things. The timing is everything. If you're in the market too much, those things aren't going to sell out the way John's historically done.
And he takes those really seriously, and he prepares for them, and mentally gets himself ready for those big shows. So we try to give him proper time off on the touring side before leading into a moment like a Madison Square Garden, for example.
Well, and it seems like it's really working too in terms of creative inspiration, because the last time John and I spoke, he's like, yeah, I'm already working on a second album, and the last one came out, not too long ago. And so it all kind of feeds the thing when he is, has the space to be creative and to make music.
He ended up realizing how much he loved the album writing process. Like, I don't think he ever thought of himself as the type of artist that would ever even put out an album. We talked about early days, everything was very like, let's put out singles. Let's you don't give the audience too much to chew on. You give them one thing at a time. Everything's very intentional for why we're putting out something that's going to lean a little bit more underground? Are we putting out something that's going to be more of an anthem? Is the idea of getting radio play, is the idea that every DJ is going to be supporting this and you can't go anywhere without hearing it in the clubs? And I think he realized how much he loved the process of getting in and actually writing music and working with different instrumentalists and vocalists and all that different stuff. So it allowed him to be like, you know what, I'm always going to be planning for the next album. But then in the meantime, I'm going to be putting out records that still mean something to me, that touch the culture in that different way. But
well, and those two things coincide with his touring, because when he was touring, 3-4 days a week, all he could do was put out a single every now and then, because you're just club, playing, hotel, rinse, lather, repeat. But when he takes a little bit more time off and he can actually think creatively, that's when he can, work on an album and write a liquid drum and bass track and, kind of do some left field stuff that he wouldn't normally be able to kind of get his headspace around when he's touring so heavily.
Totally. And so, given how big everything is, where do you see it going? How do you kind of keep creating momentum, creating new moments when you've had so many incredible accomplishments thus far?
I think we're really committed to only doing things that light the fire in him. And that's, I feel where a lot of the longevity will really come from. It's people can feel when you're just running the circuit or you're just doing things to make money. And it's if, we can't lead by chasing money. We can't lead by chasing somebody else's dream. At the end of the day, it's what actually lights the fire in you. And then I would say taking it everywhere. It's it's his understanding that, he wants to be huge in Asia. He wants to be huge in Europe. He wants to be huge in Australia. He wants to be huge in South America. So it's hey, it kind of makes it fun for us. We're hey, there's still levels to this game that we can go out there and achieve at the end of the day. And so we just keep asking him to stay committed to the idea of do things that actually get you excited. Instead of doing things that you feel you have to do, let's ask ourselves, is this really what gets us fired up? And if it's what gets us fired up, let's go through with it.
Yeah, cool.
I'm wondering if, for you guys booking shows in Asia and Australia, is the strategy the same? Are the audiences the same? What's the difference between everything that he's done in the US in terms of touring and what he's doing now?
The audiences and the strategy are unique in each place we go to. And the pace is different in different places. So, he's been coming to Europe for a few years now, and it's finally breaking. The last shows in London and Amsterdam blew out on the on-sales, and both of those markets are going to scale up. He'll go deeper into Europe and grow more markets to scale. In Australia, we knew there was a market there, but we went there fairly early in the John Summit story and did a few of the branded tours or festival tours that go out. We finally went back to market earlier this month and did 20,000 tickets in Melbourne and 15,000 tickets in Sydney. Really intentionally played those markets and didn't go wide, but wanted to really prove where we were at in the biggest markets there, and there's plans to return there and continue the growth in that market. But I don't think there's the same plan in every territory. Different territories react differently. Asia is different than Australia, is different than Europe.
Okay.
It's different than Latin America. So, I think what we're really good at is taking the learnings, understanding where we're at, collecting the data,
Yeah.
understanding what markets we really need to attack, and then having, multi approaches to them, whether it's, the first steps going in and doing the culture plays and then following up with very intentional hard tickets and then maybe moving into a festival before pushing tickets further. But, we're always looking with a multi-year plan and trying to think about, how we attack for the, long-term development in each market.
Got it. Daisy, was there something you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, no, that was perfect. I just think that while there's no cookie cutter strategy that we've employed in the others, I still think it's like the same overarching strategy of one hand shaking the other, of how do we make sure that we're still staying in the underground and touching the culture. Like we played Revolver in Australia, while he also then went and had a huge show in Sydney 2 nights in a row. I think that it's about keeping his production very special for him, and the headline shows really focused in on that. And then what can we do extracurricularly to make sure that he's ingratiating himself in the culture of these places that he's not from.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say we're really lucky when it comes to working with these guys that the biggest question that they always constantly ask us is to be thinking like 3 years ahead, to be thinking about like what is the ultimate goal, and let's work backwards. And at the end of the day, every market's going to be unique, but every market should be approached in that way where it's like, hey, where do you want to get to? Because if we know where we want to get, then we can work backwards from there and figure out what each of those touch points need to be along the way.
I would love to know where you want to get in some of these places that we're talking about, in the States, in Australia, in Europe. Like, kind of what is that ultimate goal?
I think when it comes to a scale conversation, the ultimate goal is to have every single market have the ability to go play an arena size level. But I would say, the biggest thing for us is like we always want to remain straddling this line, like between doing the things that we love and the things that like got us into this and the things that can go kick down doors for other people. I think it's the coolest thing for us sometimes is going and kicking a door down when nobody else was willing to take that risk, and then watching other people be like, you know what, I'm going to do that too. And next thing you know, 3, 4 other people come through do it, and that becomes an expectation for the entirety of the scene. It's like, oh, all the people coming up, looking over, going, you know what, I can do that too. Or one day, like if I want to go do this, I'm going to go play Madison Square Garden, or I'm going to go play Kia Forum, or I'm going to go play, this arena in Australia. And so this thing that seems so difficult before becomes more of the norm. And we love watching that happen.
I think it's maintaining this duality, right? Like we just announced John's doing F1 in Miami. He'll be doing space, where he'll likely do God knows how many hours, 10-hour set or whatever he does. But he'll also do live, which ties back to his Las Vegas residency, which is a whole other side of him. I think this duality is what makes him very interesting, what makes him cross-generational. Kids might want to party all morning at space. Adults might want to go to live and get a table. They're different experiences, and it's a very unique thing to have both sides in such a powerful way.
I also think it's hard to answer your question directly, because the reality is there isn't a goalpost, because every time we set it, he moves it.
Yeah, it's not quantitative, it's very qualitative. Like he wants to push culture forward, which is hard to put a direct goal behind. You know what I mean?
Right. But you know it when it happens.
Exactly.
Yes.
And being an arena act, being able to manage the culture side of things. So it's like, yeah, being an arena act is an amazing goal, but it's how do you do that while staying cool to your base that was with you 2020, 21, 22 before you were playing arenas. So it's really a balancing act, and that's where Experts Only and these other sort of outlets really do help to, create a unique artist.
I'm curious if you guys as agents are seeing a ripple effect here of people coming in and saying, like, we want what John Summit has, and kind of if it is replicable, in a way that you can apply it to other people's careers.
Yeah, I think John's unlocked, and John's unlocked something very interesting, and how high you can scale this. And I think there are a few artists at this time that are doing it. Dom Dalla being another one, obviously unlocking arena level touring while being able to go do underground shows and have Ibiza residencies at, some of the coolest places. I think there's somewhat of a blueprint, but at the same time, it takes a, very authentic, real, special talent to be able to unlock that code. And it takes great managers, a great team, John's team beyond the managers, from the label side to the creative side, to the curation side of his events and everything. I mean, there's an army that puts this together, far beyond the managers and the agents. So it's once you unlock that, being able to scale the whole operation, and I got to give kudos to Holt Parker and the way that they've done that, because that's not easy, and that I think is hard to replicate, especially with the pressure of timing and it being on and needing to move quickly and work with great people who can execute.
I would love to know more about that, of how you've expanded the team and how you've been selective about who you're bringing in, who the right fits are for this kind of singular, special thing.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier at breakfast, funny enough. It's going and finding like your pillar people that you're going to like more or less build the teams around. So for us, it's like, okay, touring is extremely important to us, like production is extremely important to us. We got to go find that version of us. Like we got to go find our manager in the production world. So like one of the biggest pieces we found early was Jordan Vogel, who's his tour director, but has a hand in everything that comes from the tour and production side. And so when you build around that rock, those people will also attract all the best people. That's the other thing. It's like, it's not like, I don't have some deep production network that goes down, but like when we brought on Jordan, we started realizing how much other people respect him. He brings the right people into the room. It allows us to like vet, he allows us to do our job and like vet these people properly and like give them the confidence to go out there and do great work. But when you build around pillar individuals, or like on the label side, having like Toby Andrews and Jack David, like that we can build around that nucleus, it allows you to bring on like 3, 4, 5, 6 people. Next thing you know, you have an entire team running a certain sector of his business, but it's all built around those foundational people.
Yeah, and a lot of it too is just building pieces that can be autonomous, because on our come up, we wanted to have our hands in everything. And yeah, and then you just become the master of none. You're trying to juggle all these things. So it's about finding people that can be autonomous and have the same vision as you.
We have maybe a few minutes for questions from the audience. Before we do that, I would love if you could just distill one piece of advice for anyone in the room looking to get, a little bit of what you guys have. What would you recommend doing?
I said this earlier, but I think authenticity is the biggest thing. Just being yourself and not being afraid to put yourself out there.
I'd say remember that the coolest thing is doing what you want to do, not what's actually cool. Like don't do somebody else's cool thing, do your cool thing. And remember that at the end of the day that like, nobody else has to live this life but you. So at the end of it, like do what you find cool, not what everybody else finds cool.
I think finding the right people to work with is a huge piece of this. It's a little bit of the magic dust that makes this team what this team is, and just constantly treating each other with respect and bringing each other up. And I think that's been really important over the past 5 years.
Yeah, I think making your own plan, but learning from the past and looking at what others have done in the past to, grow and also stand out in, a very busy genre that's got a lot of hype. Getting that authenticity really takes, a lot of digging. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? I see someone in the back, someone in the front. How about you right here?
Hi, I'm sure you don't have this problem, Johnson, because he's a social media mastermind. But what do you do if your artist just doesn't want to cooperate on social media? He doesn't send anything, he sends something, and it's not good. Like, how do you convince him? Because I'm sure it's a lot of people have this problem.
Did everyone hear that, or you want me to repeat the question? What do you do if your artist isn't really interested in participating on social media?
Honestly, it's funny. We work with other artists that when they came in, they were exactly like that. But the biggest thing for us is like you have to make people confident and like comfortable in the idea of putting themselves out there and finding the version of it that works for them. We don't ever tell the other artists we work with, do what John does. That's the last thing that we tell them. Like the first thing we tell them is like, hey, the idea from John that you can gather is that putting yourself out there works, and finding like an authentic version of yourself that you can live with on a daily basis and repeat, by the way, because a lot of people put an inauthentic version out there that they can't keep going for years after years. Like eventually they're like, I don't want to be that person anymore. So I would say it's like, from the authenticity side, it's leaning into like what it is about you that like people connect with. Like we work with another artist, Leighton Giordani, who probably a year ago would have laughed at the idea of doing half the stuff he does on social media, but it's because he became comfortable with the idea of doing it and leaning into these things that he might have shied away from before, like being the soft-spoken king or being the fat, or like, it's things like that where it's like he found it enjoyable to be like, oh shit, people will connect with the fact that I'm soft-spoken and that like that can be an attribute that I do. Cool, lean into that. Like, do you have a way of talking that stands out differently from other people? It's like finding that piece that works for you.
Yeah, that's goes in line with being authentic and being yourself, but being yourself outwardly to the public. You can't be afraid, and another piece of that is not paying too much attention to engagement and worrying about likes, and it's really easy to get caught up in that, but at the end of the day, if you're staying true to yourself and you can look yourself in the mirror at the end of the day, that's all that matters.
That's great advice, guys. Thank you. More questions? Oh, hi. Hi, Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan. How's it going, guys? I've done some stuff with John before through writing, but I actually want to talk about Gas Pedal because I feel like that track, that track would, a few years ago, that never would have happened. Like, you have Tape B, Subtronics, and then you've got this House King, John Summit. And I know that it goes to what you're saying, Parker, about authenticity, and also what you're saying, Holt, about just doing what he wants to do. How do you all steer those kinds of collaborations? Because that is crossing over so many worlds, and it's working.
Yeah, I mean, it's super exciting because it's fresh and it's not, something that's been done before. So I think for us, we want to encourage breaking boundaries and doing things that, people haven't seen before. Keeps it fun and fresh.
Yeah, our biggest thing is when it all started by being like, oh, first I'm going to play a dubstep record and then I'm going to play a drum and bass record. Then next thing you know, it's like, oh, well, I've got all these friends in that side. I'm like, we want to produce together and make something together. And so the question we legitimately ask every time is, are you going to be proud of yourself 10 years from now? Like, is that going to be something you look back and you go, I can't believe I did that? Or is that going to be something where you look and you go, I'm so stoked I did that? And so he told us, he was like, look, he's a dubstep kid at heart. Like, he grew up in like the Electric Forest world, like being one of the wooks.
He's a wook.
He's a wook at the end of the day. So it's like, that was something that was always inside him. And we were like, look, if that's what you want to do, like, by all means, go out there and do it. And so I think it was cool that he did it with two kind of like legends in that space too, versus just going out there and putting out his own record. But yeah, that's one of those records that it just like keeps building, funny enough, because of the fact that it's so different from everything else in his catalog. So I don't know, I find it kind of cool that he had, more or less like the balls to go out there and do that.
Totally. We are out of time. We could keep talking, but we're out of time. So let's give these guys a round of applause. Thank you guys very much for sharing.